Hello, this is Dan McKay, and I would like to introduce you to Elsie Escobar. Elsie has a lot of credits to her name as first in many areas, but one of the ones that I'm very impressed with is she was the first Hispanic female in the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. That is tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So give us a little background on this. How in the world did you get started in podcasting?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I was in Los Angeles doing the acting thing. May back in the day, that was like my other iteration. And the acting industry really broke me because you strive so hard and are constantly getting negativity, or rejection all the time. And I started to, my soul started to hurt a lot. And then, I ended up going to a yoga class, of course, because it's LA and everybody does things like that. And in the process of me stepping into yoga, I found that it started to help me feel better, right? My mental health started to get feeling better. And I was like, okay, there seems to be something to this thing. And I got so into it that I decided, of course, that I wanted to teach yoga. And I started into that journey in Los Angeles. In the process, I got an iPod, one of those little iPods with the video on it, for Christmas in 2005. And at that time, I didn't have any digital music. All my music was in DVDs. So I got this iPod to listen to music, and I couldn't listen to music because I didn't have anything digitized. So I opened up iTunes, and in there was these things called podcasts in iTunes in 2005. And I decided to download them because they were free and it was audio, and I was going to start to listen to these things. And I fell in love with the medium. I was just like, oh my God, how amazing is this? And at that time, there weren't very many. So I was able to just kind of binge listen on all kinds and got really into it. I got into the community right away because the dialogue within podcast always started, meaning people are like, send us voice feedback, send us an email, and we'll, and I was like, okay, I'll email you. And I did, and they would respond. And I was like, oh. So in the process, I ended up being mentored by one of the podcasters, and he was like, why don't you start a podcast? And I was like, okay, sure. What am I going to podcast about? And as I was building my show, whatever that would be, I thought I'm just going to test the waters, and I'll start recording my yoga classes because I'm already doing them. And people were asking them, meaning they were going, we're going on vacation next week. I wish I could take you with me. People were saying things like that because I started to teach yoga and stuff. And I thought, okay, well, I'll record myself and I thought, oh, that's a great thing if I just do this podcast thing. And so I did. And I was the first one because why wouldn't you want to have an audio yoga class, right? It makes sense.
As long as you're then just telling people how to move and they can figure it out.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's one thing. I was very skilled with my verbal cues. It actually made me a better teacher. But I have a blog post with the poses, and I would attach a PDF to it. So if people wanted to download it. But I thought, if people knew me, like I wasn't catering to new yoga students. It was mostly to the people who were taking my classes. That's who I thought was going to do it. But as of now, that yoga podcast is still there. I haven't produced since 2013, but it has almost 5 million downloads.
Oh my goodness, that's huge.
I know.
That's huge.
Isn't that crazy? It's like,
so you have 2 podcasts now, or 3? Or how many? 4. Tell us about them.
I know. Oh my God. Once you stop, you can't stop. Once you start. So the second one that I started, because I stopped producing Elsie's very innovative title as well. It was called Elsie's Yoga Class, because I was like, I don't know what to call this. I didn't want to spend any time coming up with a fancy name. So I'm like, it's Elsie's Yoga Class. Everybody will know what that is, right? And so the second show I started was a show about podcasting, because I work for Libsyn. And it's a podcast hosting company. And I thought, why does this company not have a podcast? Because we're a podcast hosting company. What better way to reach our audience than via podcast? So I kind of pushed us to have a podcast and developed the content around my ability to produce, because bandwidth, for all of us doing all the things. And so I decided I want to have a bi-monthly show. And I got Rob Walsh, the VP of Podcaster Relations at Libsyn, who is a very well-known person in the space. And he has a lot of incredible wealth of knowledge. And so we do this I started that in 2013. And we're still going strong. That podcast continues to grow, blowing my mind. It's really long, really dense, not very fun to listen to because it's very dry, but people love it. The other show I started in 2014. It's called She Podcasts. And that show is about podcasting from the female point of view, because we felt a lot of the shows about podcasting out there and a lot of the pundits in the podcasting space were all male, and they all were addressing podcasting from a very technical stance, which we need to know, right? All the gear and the how to record, those are skill sets that we definitely need to have. But there were other things that weren't being talked about. Like when I started with Jess, she had just gotten pregnant. I had an almost 3-year-old that was still nursing. And most of the time I had a child attached to my breastfeeding while we're recording. And there were many times when we had to stop. And there were many accidents that happened. I have to go wipe a butt was something that what we did often, and there were, we didn't who could, in terms of the podcasting space, we can't go share that with just anybody. But this is the reality of what it took for us to continue. If we would have waited to have a nice space and quiet, and we would have never made it. So we just said, we're going to do it. We're going to talk about these things nobody's talking about the challenges that are unique to women podcasters that can range from possibly our lack of education around technology, how to demystify some of it, the basics of trying to negotiate our time, making sure that we're not doing all the things, how to outsource stuff, what really matters. And then a lot of the time we just go off tangent and talk about 8,000 other things that have nothing to do with podcasting. And we just spend time together. So for us, She Podcast is not only a podcast about podcasting, but a lifestyle experience and kind of getting to know us as friends.
How interesting. Let's find out a little more about you personally. How did your early life affect who you are today? You have so much passion for what you're doing. Where did this all start?
Oh my God. Well, I am an immigrant. I was born in El Salvador. I came to this country when I was 9. So that was that. I came from a very strong family. We came to this country in 1981 when there was a civil war going on in our country. I experienced a lot of scary things when I was a little girl. I still hold on, now I am more skilled in recognizing what trauma is and understanding when something affected you deeply in your psyche when you didn't really even know. And so we moved to this country on July 2nd, 1981. And I remember, July 4th was 2 days later, right? Well, that was new because we didn't know it was Independence Day. But there was all of the fireworks. And the fireworks sound just like balaceras. Yeah, right. Like gunfire. And I remember, that traumatic response of feeling like we have to go underneath somewhere, underneath a table or get on the ground. And in looking back, it actually took quite a while to be able to let go into quietness and also into being okay with loud noises. Because it's weird because you immediately think it's a gunshot because that's what I was raised in, and it was so commonplace that that's what you did. And the sounds of loud helicopters or, there was another thing like a curfew every night before we left. There was a curfew where everybody needed to be home by 7:00. And in the morning, everybody could leave, right? But at night, nobody could go out. And I remember being particularly scared. There were times when my parents would go to a party, and you would go to a party and you essentially had to just be party all night, essentially by force, because if they went out to a party, they just couldn't come back home. Like it was just something that they did. And so all of these little memories that I didn't know, right, that affected me. Coming to this country, English is my second language, having to be in, ESL classes and having an accent and all of that stuff. All of those things like empowered me to be where I am today. In looking back, I never felt them to be a obstacle for me, though. It was one of those things where I just was like, yeah, okay, what's next? I don't know where that came from.
So what were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome?
Language. I think language was the biggest. And I feel that that's why I'm such a passionate advocate for podcasting as a tool for transformation, for personal transformation. Because in acting too, because I ended up getting an MFA in acting as well. And in that process, I started to recognize how language was really challenging. I was made fun of because of my accent, because I couldn't pronounce things properly. And that layered with being a Latin American woman coming from a culture that's particularly, male not dominated, and you're not supposed to speak up and keep your mouth shut. In addition to you speak weird, your voice is, why are you saying things like that? It kind of showed me not to speak up. Like it made me feel like I just needed to be quiet. And I internalized that. And I didn't really address that till I was in my 20s when I was going to grad school, when I was challenged to do Shakespeare. And that was so outside my comfort zone, because not only is there a pattern to speech, but these words are hard to say. And also having to learn standard American English in class, like as a class, so as an actor, the whole point of learning a standard American English is so that your voice could be neutral, so that then you can put things on it. Meaning, if you're going to be from Ireland, if you're going to be from the South, if you're going to be from Latin America, you can listen to what the vowel sounds are and what the consonants are, and then the rhythm of that language is, so you could put like a costume on your voice. And I couldn't hear the difference. And I felt very ill-equipped, and I felt very just afraid of speaking up, of trying, because I had that like, what if I get it wrong? I can't speak in an English accent. That's weird. I feel, because the girl that was only in that class, it was a very prestigious program. So there was only 3 women and 5 men. But actually our class only had 3 women and 4 men. So it was only 7 of us. So there's no way to run away. It was 7. And they were amazing with their language skills. And I was like, but it taught me so much about myself. It forced me to face demons that I hadn't for so long. And it really empowered me to speak up.
So what demons do you feel you overcame?
The inability to speak, to literally speak, to let my voice be my guide, to use language as a power, to be able to understand that I had something to say. And I started to do it via somebody else's words. So by embodying somebody else, I was able to say things that maybe I wasn't able to say before, or that I didn't feel like I should say before. So it kind of helps you prepare. And that started the process of being able to speak up in my own life, because it kind of gave me the tools to be able to actually do that physically when it was called for. But I didn't actually do it until I started to podcast. Because being an actor or giving voice to another character is one thing, but giving voice to your own self physically out is a whole other thing. So that's where it started, the journey into using podcasting as a tool for personal transformation.
So have you given up on the acting part?
Well, you know what? I did. I did do one last, like over a decade ago, I did one more stage production. I mean, I did a couple of movies and some TV shows as a guest star and things like that. The money's incredible, right? But I don't think that it really aligned to who I wanted to be. If I tend to present a specific way, I'm easy on the eyes. I'm what one would consider beautiful in that realm. And I've never aligned with that definition of who I am. And it makes me feel self-conscious. And I felt that my physical appearance spoke for me instead of my voice. And so I found or have found that my voice is what I want to guide. And in podcasting, you don't have to look at me. Not to say that I don't like the way I look. It's not that. It's that it really removes the ability for people. Sometimes it's a deterrent. Sometimes it opens doors. But sometimes it's a deterrent for a lot of different things. And people tend to look at you more than they tend to listen to you. And I don't want that. I want what I have to say to lead. And I found podcasting to be the tool for me.
That's interesting. What would you say motivates you today?
I'm a huge podcasting. I mean, it's like I can't stop. I've been in this for now 13 years. And women's voices, being able to hear people get behind the microphone and give voice to the things that they have felt that they couldn't speak up about, the ability to empower somebody in a position where they feel that they don't matter, to get behind the microphone and just say things aloud, to be able to hear and share stories of underrepresented communities out there that are finally putting things together. Like all of those things to me, or hearing stories from women who say like, I'm finally getting my voice out there. Oh my gosh, it's been so incredible. Or you inspired me so much when you said this. Like that kind of stuff, I feel is just so important. And it's not, and I find that the medium itself is so, it fills me up. Like I was just talking to Joleka Lantigua Williams, who was in a panel with me. She has a company called Lantigua Williams and Company, and she just produced a show called Feeling My Flow. And it's about menstruation. But it is aimed at 10 and 11-year-old girls. And interestingly enough, I have a 10-year-old. And I remember I actually tweeted out and I was like, I need a show for my daughter, because right now the shows are either very young, like from like toddlers to about 7. Then they skip because the middle schoolers or like the tweens are very underserved. And then you get to the teenage girls, 16, 17, 18. But that little area there is, that tween thing there is not being served. And she has this podcast talking about menstruation for that. And I cried when I told her that. I couldn't, if you listen to it, I'm like, this is it. You are talking about the thing that I wanted her to hear. I wanted her to hear from people, her own voice, that she can hear herself in these stories, and that it's not like, but it's an incredible show. So I am deeply grateful to have another voice to share with my daughter so that she doesn't, we obviously have a really open communication. So she knows all these things, but there's an extra layer of the world also sharing these stories with her. So it's not just mama said.
Definitely. So you have a 12-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, 10-year-old at this point. What are your fears or concerns for her as she grows into the adult world in today's environment?
What I'm most afraid of is technology. I'm afraid of that. I'm just having conversations with my husband. And I've had conversations with her. We've had very intimate, very emotional conversations already, because I've been telling her, you and I are learning together about this. There has been no other generation that has had to deal with the power that you now have in your pocket as a 10-year-old. You can take out your iPad and she can find the world. And it's amazing and it's so scary because she might wander. And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, imagine if you're like in a lovely city that's all clean and nice, and you're walking around looking at the stores and you're by yourself and everything's great, and beautiful and you're discovering the world, and then all of a sudden you take a wrong turn and you end up in a kind of a darker, alleyway or a weird neighborhood, or you start to feel lost and you open a door and you see things that you weren't ready to see. That's kind of what the internet is like. And I was trying to convey to her that it's not that I don't want her to be exposed to many things. I don't want you to stop your curiosity. It's just that there's a certain capacity to your 10-year-old mind at this moment that I don't want you to see things that you may not be ready to process. And I'd like to be there if you would like to see things, but I'd like to help navigate. What I don't want is random exposure where you did not have a choice. And that's what I'm afraid of.
Also, things like bullying.
Oh my God, yeah. We've definitely spoken about that for sure. And to be able to empower her with that. And in social media, like all of that, it keeps me up at night. It's just like, there's an element of me where I'm just like, nothing. Everything will be closed. You will not go anywhere. You will not sign up. The end, But it's like, what? How is that even? It's not even a possibility. I mean, yeah, it is a possibility, but I also don't want to leave her weaponless where,
It's a scary thing because, it's so anonymous in so many ways today that seems like it shouldn't be, but it is. And the other thing I think that's scary is how fast we are pushing people to grow up, especially the girls. What they look like is so important to them, and how makeup is going to be evolving in your life before too long, I'm afraid.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I let her play with that stuff for sure. Like because my mom was always very no. And I remember, there was a point where I was like, come on, Mom, but I don't let her go out in makeup. I just let her play with it, just to put it on, like whatever. And yeah, body consciousness. That's the other thing that where she starts to call her, like, I don't know, your self things. Like she has to work through all of that on her own. I can't make her not think what she's thinking. I just can help her process it easier,
Kind of an exhilarating trip, and yet a very scary trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What are some of the serious challenges as an adult you've faced?
I was in a long-term psychologically abusive relationship for a long, long time. And coming back to my voice, I was afraid to speak up. I was also, when I didn't understand what the term gaslighting was until the past, 2 or 3 years or so, but that's what was happening. And so you tend to doubt your own understanding. Like you see something and you go like, well, that's wrong. Right. And then people are so manipulative that you just go like, oh, no, this is fine. This is just, and you're like, okay, all right. And what ends up happening is you isolate yourself so that you remove yourself from anybody that can really shine reality back at you, because there's an element of shame. Like, why can't I get out of this on my own? Or I'm going to be the one that's going to change the situation. Or it's not really going to be this way it's not going to get worse. Or this is what I've chosen. I've made my bed and there's no out.
So tell us what you feel gaslighting is. Give us a description of it.
A description of it is like when somebody does something in your face that it is one thing, and then they tell you, no, you didn't see that. So in a real like crass way, it's like if you know and you've seen somebody do cocaine and they are high in front of you, and then you go, are you high? Are you on drugs right now? No. What are you talking about? No, I'm not. And you're like, but you have like it coming out of your nose. Why is your nose bleeding? Oh, I just had, like stuff like that where they are so manipulative that you don't even know, like you doubt your own understanding of that in your face. And they literally can say, I am not high. I am not coked up. What are you talking about? You are the one that is having a problem here. And all of a sudden I'm going, well, no. Yeah, you don't trust me any. And all of a sudden it became about, I had a problem. I'm the one that's just, a party pooper or whatever. Or, and you just like, oh, I guess I must have been wrong. Maybe that was just, he was baking. You know what I mean? So then you start to doubt your own sensory organs. Like, this is a table. He said it was water, but is the table? I think it's a table. And you truly start, so it's a master manipulation where you no longer know, because and it comes over and over and over again, and everything is turned to the point where your level of your self-esteem takes such a dive, because whenever you doubt anything or when you verbalize the fears, it all comes back to you, and it's your fault, and you are insert bad language that it's derogatory to women. And then you start to internalize that and feel like, oh, obviously he knows something I don't.
And so you feel like you experience doubt in every fiber of your being.
Yeah. And that there's no out. And so the other aspect of it is, if he's saying that, then it must be true. And so if I go out and I tell somebody else, they're going to believe him, not me. So I'm not sure what I can do. And then there's the other aspect where it's just like, what if I tell the truth and I say I'm in trouble or whatever, and then I have to do something about it? And that's scary, because even though we're getting something in this situation, whether it's negative or not, we're getting something from it. Something is there that is in a positive way reinforcing something we're missing, or we're lacking something that we feel we're not able to do at the moment. And that's also a scary process, because you're in a position of isolation. So you can't have the support that you need to somebody to go like, yes, you can do it. Like, sometimes that's all I needed. Yes, you can do it. And I'm not judging you, because shame can really drive any kind of action out of the equation.
And during that period, this was a he?
Yeah.
And during that period, did he not want you to work or go outside or have friends or the social life?
Nope. That was fine. That was not an issue. It was, I did all the things, but it was interesting because I detached myself from any kind of relationship in that sense, meaning I lived my own life. I pretended like this wasn't happening. And then I would just come home and it was this other weird reality where it was it was just so disparate. Like, how can you, if you would, let's say we're talking right now and you look at me and you see all the things I'm doing, and then you don't know what's going on at home though. So I open the door and then all of a sudden I'm in this totally messed up situation. And then you sit back and go how is that even? That doesn't align. That was my big shame.
And how long did you go through this?
15 years.
15 years.
All my 20s.
Wow. And did you have your daughter at that time?
No.
Thank goodness. I'm sure women are going through that.
Yes.
With children.
Yes. And that's another layer that, thank God that I didn't have that. I mean, there was, that's just a blessing that happened. And the reason that it lasted so long too is because it was half, it was like we were committed, but it was also very not. There were times 3 months at a time we were in different places, and I was very independent through the entire process. But part of it is that it was like that. What is happening? Why are you not leaving? Kind of thing. And part of that is the fact that I didn't have the skill set to be able to stand up for myself. And interpersonal communications are skills that I think we as women really are often underserved with, where it's I need to be able to have challenging conversations with people and not have to always feel like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or he's going to be so sad. Why? Right? And I was raised in a culture of subservience, if you will, where you do have to allow other people to speak. Like usually you just you just bow, if you will, or you be quiet, or it's going to go away. Like we're not empowered to go ahead and into that situation. And because of that, I wasn't given, it's like you have to practice stuff like that. Right. And that's one thing that I felt was really hard for me, is that interpersonal communications where you can have a challenging conversation with somebody that you are in an intimate relationship with, where you may or may not disagree. It could be a really hard topic that you're having with each other, but in a mature conversation with a man who is evolved and has the capacity to be an adult is a different thing than when you are not. And I didn't never experience that before. I didn't know that there was I didn't know that was even a thing. And that is something that I am so deeply grateful to my husband, he is amazing, that man. And unfortunately for him, there's been times where he has had to sit there and go, really? You didn't learn these things? Like you didn't know that you can come to me even when we disagree, or these are basic conversations that I need you to share with me. Like, you can't just do that. You need to come and sit with me, and it's okay.
So this is another person.
Yeah, this is another person. Yeah.
And did you have some healing in between?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was healing in between. There was processing for sure of all of these things. And there was also, how do you say it? Like, it's kind of like speed it up. The way that technology is moving forward, like there was a point there where it's like, when you're ready, you're ready. And you just process all of it. You just go deep into the darkness and you work on it. You work on seeing all of it. You work all the kinks out. You don't hold on to these patterns. But that takes a higher level skill. Thankfully, I had been studying yoga for so long. I had been doing a lot of the acting stuff that we've been doing. I was really connected to my body. So I did a real deep modality in being able to understand at a much deeper level, meditation, like all of that was already part of my tool belt. I just had chosen not to use that because I didn't want to see it. I wasn't ready to see that. I didn't want to work that deeply. But then when you're ready, you're just like, okay, give it to me. I'm in.
So you finally worked through it.
Yeah.
And came out the other side.
Yeah.
That whole person that you really wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you most wish for your daughter?
That she can hold on to her sense of self. And I think that either to stand up for herself, but also to be okay when she's wrong. I think that I have two daughters. I have a 10-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. So I have it's separate things. But my older one right now is one thing that she told me the other day, where we were talking about, she had an experience and she was wrong. And we were talking about a book that I was reading, and I was like, oh my God, this is touching my heart right now, Hunter. This is what's happening in the book. And I told her the story. And then I said, but the hardest part for me reading this book is that this boy could have avoided all this stuff if he would have just told his mom what he was going through. And it broke my heart that he felt like he couldn't come tell her. And I go, I don't want you to ever feel like you can't come tell me when you've done something wrong or that you're feeling alone. And then she goes, Mom, being wrong is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And I thought, oh, if I could give her the grace or the courage to be able to go to somebody that she loves and go like, I was totally wrong. I am so sorry. And let's go, continue the conversation, because that's such a wonderful skill to be able to have, to self-look and to take responsibility for when you mess up and also for the things that you do well. So I get that too. But we get so stuck with I'm right and I don't care and I want to do and who cares what you're saying. And there's a grace to being able to look at yourself and go, you're right. Totally was wrong on that. I am so sorry.
I think she will have that skill because you've talked about it, because you've given her the wind beneath her wings.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Listening to another story of the impact of trailblazers. Visit our website at trailblazers.